Today is August the 28th, 2013, and we're interviewing Stanley Fine as part of the Roots to Boots project for the Dallas Jewish Historical Society. Good morning, Stanley.
Good morning. Nice to be here.
Thank you. First of all, Stanley, can you tell us a little bit about the historical origins of your family? Where did your grandparents come from?
Okay. On my mother's side, my grandmother was born in a place called Ostryki-Dolna, which was originally Austria and now is part of Poland. And her husband came from the same area. On my father's side, my grandparents came from Lithuania and emigrated to South Africa, I would say in about 1910 or so, somewhere around there. And my maternal grandparents left Ostryki-Dolna and moved to Belgium, Antwerp, where my mother was born, and they immigrated to South Africa about 1936, before the Holocaust.
The grandparents that immigrated in 1910,
Yes.
obviously it was before the Holocaust. What
Yes.
was their reason for leaving Lithuania?
Well, there were the pogroms, and they just felt that it was a better life to leave. And my grandfather left first, and then his wife came a few years later.
What type of business was he in South Africa?
They were in the office supply business in South Africa. It was a general dealer that became an office supply business in Johannesburg, and my maternal grandfather was in the diamond business, and he was one of the founders of the Diamond Club of South Africa.
Uh-huh.
Coming from Belgium, being in the diamond industry, that's what he continued doing.
So where did you personally grow up?
I grew up in Johannesburg, went to school there, went to university there, and then immigrated in 1987 to the United States.
Tell me a little bit about schooling in Johannesburg and what the school system was like, and if you can, perhaps compare it to the school system in the United States.
The school system was very different. It was a more rigid system. It was a quarterly system where you took a subject at school throughout the year and were tested at the end of the year. There wasn't as much interaction, I found, between the parents and the children as there is today. And I'm not sure if that's just because of the time frame that we went to school, but it was much more based on the British system. There were punishments, there was canings, it was very different. But it was a good system.
Were you in a private school?
I was in a private school, yes. I actually was in my primary school was a public school, but my high school was a private school.
And then where you went to university?
I went to university in Johannesburg, to the University of Witwatersrand, we call it WITS, and that's in the city, and where I studied for my law degree.
Your law degree.
Yeah.
And then you say, did you marry in South Africa?
Got married in South Africa, 1984. No, I apologize. 1982.
1982.
Don't tell my wife I slipped up on that.
And what was the reason that you chose to leave South Africa?
Well, I'd always wanted to leave. I'd actually wanted to try and study here in the States. My parents wouldn't hear of it. And when we got married, Lynn and I decided that we just didn't see a future in the country, not for us, more so for our children. And we decided to leave. And we picked up and we went to Los Angeles. And I suppose that most South Africans really gravitate towards a city where they have friends that have left prior to themselves, and they make it their home and they feel comfortable there. Moved to Los Angeles not because I thought it's a great city, but that was just where I had some friends, and it made sense to be there.
So how long did you live in Los Angeles?
We lived in Los Angeles 7 years, and then we came to Dallas in 1992.
So you had friends in Los Angeles but chose to move, and what was the reason for choosing to move?
I just felt that from a business opportunity, it was a better place to be. At the time that I left Los Angeles, it was going through a pretty rough period. The economy wasn't too good, business wasn't good, and I decided to move to Dallas.
How did you choose Dallas?
I had a friend who I went into partnership with, and we decided to, he lived in Dallas, and we set up the company here in Dallas.
Where did you live when you first came to Dallas, and what part of the community did you settle in?
Originally, we rented a house in North Dallas, and we were there about a year, and then we purchased a house also in North Dallas, around Prestonwood area.
Is that where you're currently living now?
Yeah.
What was it like adjusting to the community here in Dallas? What was your experience?
It was very easy. We didn't know a lot of people. We knew a few people. One family we knew from South Africa going back many, many years. And they were just amazing to us. We stayed with them when we initially arrived, just to get our bearings. And through them we met more people in the community, and we found that the community was very, very warm, very friendly.
Okay. So when you came here, you had your own company.
Yes.
And you've obviously been successful with that company, and life is good for you here?
Life's had its ups and downs, but it's been good.
And you're raising children here in Dallas? Tell us about your children.
Well, my eldest was born in LA, but she was 2 years old when we came here. And my youngest was obviously born in Dallas. They started school at Solomon Schechter, and my eldest moved to Green Hill. I think she was in the 2nd grade, and my youngest started from Primer at Green Hill, and they both graduated from Green Hill. Morgan, who's the eldest, went on to university in Boston at Brandeis. She's just graduated from Brandeis. And Remy has just started at UT in Austin.
So when you first arrived in this country, what were your impressions of the United States?
Well, we'd been to the United States a few times before, but being a tourist and being an immigrant are two very different things. I've always loved the US, but things were done very differently here, and it took us time to figure out the roadmap, so to speak. Business is different. We think they speak the same language. They don't. It is different. Life in general is, I would say, not as open as it is in South Africa, in the sense of people being able to move from and go and visit people, just drop in with unannounced, things like that, which we were very accustomed to, which is different in the US. You don't really go and visit people without telling them or asking them if it's okay. It wasn't a big deal. It's just one of the differences, and I think you learn so much when you're here. We came from a very sheltered environment, very comfortable environment, wonderful upbringing. I can't imagine having a better upbringing anywhere in the world to what we had in South Africa. But we were sheltered from a lot of things that we didn't ask about. We knew that there were issues in the country, but we just went about our daily activities as if nothing was going on, and we were very, very fortunate children. And the community in South Africa was an extremely powerful and successful community, and life was great. But coming to this country, you were exposed to so much more. You learned so much, and for that I'm very grateful.
You mentioned that business was different. Can you give me an example? I'm interested to know, how is business different here than in South Africa?
It's different in the way things are done, how you pay your employees. Obviously, there were a lot more restrictions, labor restrictions, and things of that nature. Overtime restrictions. I think that it's a lot more regulated here than it was in South Africa, and regulated, I'm sure, for the good. But you've got to learn the ropes, and I was fortunate in that I worked for a US-owned company for 2 or 3 years, and I learned a lot. Whereas I would say coming to this country and trying to start your own business from scratch must be very difficult. It's always good to learn from people that live here.
So labor laws are different. Were there any other laws or social mores that you found different between the two countries?
Well, obviously there was certainly no discrimination here in the sense that your labor pool was whoever was qualified for the job. The labor pool in South Africa was different in the sense that you still employed whoever was qualified for the job, but you didn't really mix. I was involved in a corporation in South Africa that employed most probably about 400 people. But it was, and it was a wonderful labor force, but there wasn't a lot of interaction between the blacks and the whites, or the African Americans and the whites. Whereas here, everybody's on the same level, and my father played in my upbringing, in the sense that in South Africa, the father was the breadwinner, and he worked, and yes, he was obviously interested in the well-being of his kids, but he didn't participate on a daily basis in school activities, changing diapers, things of that nature. And in this country, and we didn't have any help when we arrived here. We were very fortunate in South Africa. We had a lot of outside help. So you can't leave everything to the mom. So you learn very quickly, and it's good because I think that I had a much more active role in bringing up my children than my dad did in bringing me up. And they did a marvelous job, I think. But at least I saw my children growing from day to day and being involved in the activities and taking them to sports and sending them off to camp, which was very different. We didn't really go to camp in South Africa. We went on family vacations. So those things are different. But, you know, those were the adjustments we had to make. But they weren't really adjustments. They were just, this is what you do.
How did people in Los Angeles and in Dallas, and if there was a difference between the two, by the way, react to you as a new immigrant to this country?
They were fascinated, especially the people in Los Angeles, because they could not understand. They understood to a certain extent the rationale for leaving, but they could not figure out how you could move from a country which was your home and come to somewhere so different where you didn't even know the route to the grocery store. It was beyond their comprehension how you could have such an upheaval in your life and go to something that you didn't know whether it was going to work out or not. You thought that it was going to work out, but they weren't prepared to take that risk. But I think that the reason they weren't prepared to take that risk was they never were put into that situation. They never had to think about that risk. We always knew that there was something brewing in South Africa, especially as part of the Jewish community. And we always traveled, and we always went out of the country. And I think that deep down there was a knowledge that you were going to certainly try and leave the country at some stage, whereas the people from the United States, it never entered their mind as to they'd leave the country because they thought that there was a political issue or a social issue or anything of that nature. So for them it was, they were amazed.
When you left, obviously you couldn't pack up everything. Were there certain things that you brought with you that were of particularly important significance emotionally or historically? And were there things that you had to leave behind that you are sad to have had to leave?
Well, the memories, and unfortunately you can't take the memories with you. Possessions, we took what we needed. The photographs, the little silver pieces that may have been handed down from generation to generation, the candlesticks, things of that nature. But we arrived with 3 suitcases, so there wasn't a lot. We then did get a container of furniture that we had purchased to bring over here. But, you know, from the point of view of the memories, yeah, we left quite a bit behind.
Do you travel back often?
Yeah, I normally go back once a year. I still have, I don't have parents any longer, unfortunately they've passed on. But Lynn has her parents there and her sister there. So we try and go back once a year.
Have other members of your side of the family left since you left?
Well, my sister emigrated to Australia, but she's now back in South Africa because she was taking care of my dad, who recently passed on. She will be going back to Australia, I imagine, next year. So outside of my immediate family, there's nobody.
So between your family and Lynn's family, people are kind of spread around at this point.
Correct.
I see. Can you describe some of your earlier experiences during your first years in Dallas, some of the things that you remember that were particularly important, interesting, notable to you?
Well, I remember arriving on the 4th of July. That was when we got to Dallas, and going to a 4th of July celebration with fireworks. That was my first day in Dallas, which was quite interesting. What can I say that's been interesting? There's so many different memories of Dallas. The kids going to Green Hill, their first days at school, meeting a lot of American people, and becoming extremely friendly with parents from my children's grades. Just seeing Dallas has changed dramatically as far as I'm concerned in the last 20 years. Coming from Johannesburg, which is really a sophisticated city, going to Los Angeles, which I think is a wonderful city. It offers anything and everything. And coming to Dallas, it was harder to move from LA to Dallas than it was from Johannesburg to Los Angeles. Dallas, to me in the beginning, was a very friendly place. And I hope I'm not going to offend anybody, but it was a wasteland. That's the way I saw it. Mm-hmm. However, I think that what has happened over the last 20 years is it's attracted many people from around the country. It's become a very, I wouldn't say international city, but there's some major corporations here, and so people are coming from all over the place. The restaurant scene has improved. There's a lot that has changed in the city over the last 20 years. And the real thing that stuck out to me about Dallas compared to Los Angeles is it's an easy city to live in. And from that point of view, instill that in the kids. And it's very difficult here because you have Friday night football and you can't really put your kids into an environment where they want to enjoy those kind of things, and then you say they can't. So it was a bit of a balancing act, and in the beginning the kids would call and say, do you mind if I go to the game tonight? And but they very much understand the meaning of Friday night and the dinner table. The other thing that I think they will definitely continue with is we have dinner together every evening as a family.
Speaking of foods, tell me a little bit about the foods that you most enjoyed in South Africa and whether you've continued with that tradition here.
Yes, we have a special boerewors, which is a sausage that you barbecue. And my kids love it, and whenever they come home, that's what they want. And it's like a little tradition that we have. I like the dried meat, which is people try and equate to beef jerky. I think it's very different. I really enjoy that, and the candies. The candies from South Africa are outstanding, especially the chocolates. We miss those, so whenever we go back, we load up with chocolates and bring it back. Those are the foods that remind us about South Africa.
Well, now that you're here in the Jewish community, can you tell us in what ways you might have become personally involved in the community itself?
In what ways I could have or should have?
Or have.
I have not really got involved in the community as such. I've been a contributor to the community, but from the point of view of offering my time, I haven't done a lot for the community.
Have you been involved in anything in Dallas outside of the Jewish community from a professional standpoint, anything?
The only thing that I really got involved with it for a period of about 2 years was the U.S. Holocaust Museum offered an education seminar once a year to teachers from around Texas, from public, private high schools and universities. And I got involved with that and assisted in that program. And it was actually quite amazing to see people coming in, and they were mainly non-Jewish people, being told about the Holocaust. I mean, there were people, educated people that knew absolutely nothing about it and were absolutely fascinated. And the purpose of the course was for them to go back to their communities and their colleges and their schools and teach this information to their students. So from that point of view, that was very gratifying.
What was your role in that project?
I assisted in raising money for the project because we had to bring in the teachers and some of the students. It was not anything that the city or the state would fund, so I assisted in raising money for that program.
Is that a program that's going to continue, or
yes, it goes from year to year, and I believe it's done about October, November of each year.
Wonderful. Well, that's terrific. Well, Stanley, are there some things that I have not asked you that you would like to share with us, either about your family life, your family history, traditions, your children, anything at all that I have not touched upon that you think would be important as a legacy to add to this interview?
I would say that specifically talking about Dallas, the thing that stands out the most to me is how the community rallied around the family when Lynn became ill. And I'm not sure if she had mentioned that to you.
She did.
And to this day, I am just absolutely blown away by people who were total strangers to us that brought food to the house and inquired about her. And I really think that bit of Southern hospitality, if you want to call it, whatever it is endemic to this community, and I'm forever grateful for that.
Thank you so much. It's really been a pleasure getting to know you and having you share your story with us. And we wish you the best. We wish your wife the best.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you, Dallas.
My pleasure.
Thank you,
Thank you so
Stanley.
much for asking me.